Welcome back to Regaining the Balance. This is Matt speaking, and I'm bringing you a sort of a part two additional information regarding the actual destruction of Rome. So we'll call this the actual destruction of Rome, part two. One of my viewers, I think possibly subscribers, sent me a very interesting, and I can't find the original message, so I apologize, sir. But I really appreciate you sending me this. So I cannot give the person any credit because I can't find out who exactly it was that sent it to me. Thankfully, though, I still had the page open, and what we're going to do is today I'm going to go ahead and just read out part of this article that was written in 1813 by a man who happened to visit Rome in the late 1790s, and his what he wrote about it actually very much coincides with the original video that I made that many of you guys watched and enjoyed, and I just wanted to read this out to you guys and also show you guys while I'm reading this. I'm going to go ahead and throw up also a whole bunch of other shots of the excavation of Rome, and the pictures and this depiction together are both things that are very much something that is going to bolster the case here for the fact that ancient Rome really was destroyed by a flood and not anything else, because it was buried. And when I say buried, I mean it was buried. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is it looks like it says the Alexandria Gazette, which, oh my goodness. So I used to live very close to this area here. This is Royal Street, Alexandria. I know this place very well. How interesting. My old stomping grounds. All right, so the state of Rome. Alas, rude fragments now lie scattered where the shapely columns stood. Her palaces are dust. Rome, June 10th, 1813. I was at Rome in the year 1791, the city then containing 160,000 inhabitants. The luxury in the equipage and liveries was considerable. In many of the great houses, the foreigners met with a hospitable reception, and everything indicated a great and opulent capital. I entered the city this time by the same road, and instead of carriages was met by droves of oxen, goats, and half-wild horses, driven along black-eyed herdsmen, armed with long pikes and muffed up in their cloaks. They look like Tartars. How interesting. The dust raised by the cattle filled the air. These herdsmen with their charge seek every evening within the walls a refuge from the pestiferous atmosphere of the environs. They take possession of the quarters and palaces which are abandoned to them by the population. In proportion as it diminishes and is crowded together with the unwholesome air into the center of the city, the Porta Populi, the Trans-Tiberine quarter, and those of the Quirinal and the Mountain of the Trinity are already deserted by the inhabitants, and country people have settled in them. And you guys remember, I did point out in the video that for hundreds of years, the Capitoline Hill in that area was known as the Plano Vacchino, or Plano Vaccino, the cow field. So continuing, the population of Rome is reduced to 100,000 souls, and this number includes more than 40,000 vine dressers, herdsmen, and gardeners. Extensive districts of the city are transformed into villages and are occupied by rustics, driven by the insalubrity of the atmosphere of their former dwellings. Such a prodigious depopulation in the short space of 22 years is almost unprecedented. Now, it seems like something else happened in Rome, huh? The political events that period have doubtless contributed much to the diminution, but the principal cause must be sought in the general relation of Rome and the effects of its noxious atmosphere. Remember, guys, this is 1813, so I think a lot of us already know that during this period of time of 1812, 1813, 1814. I know in the United States there was the year without summer around that period of time, and there's also plenty of people talking about these noxious gases and very strange gases that make people sick. So this is another actual depiction of this exact phenomenon in Rome. Okay, yep. The scourge is every year making fresh encroachments, every year overspread streets, places, and quarters, and every year its baneful influence must augment because it acts in an inverse ratio to the assistance opposed by the population. The fewer the inhabitants, the greater number of victims, and every funeral is the avant courier of many more. That period, therefore, is probably not far distant when this queen of cities will be completely shorn of her splendor. Nothing be left of her but that glorious name which time cannot destroy. The traveler will then find at Rome, as he now does at Volterra, not but a vast collection of monuments, palaces, and ruins of every age. The markets of near approaching destruction are impressed upon every part of Rome. As there are many more houses than inhabitants, no person thinks of repairing his own if it becomes ruinous. He seeks another elsewhere to mend a door, and would be denied labor thrown away, they would tumble down. As they fall are left lying in this manner. Number of convents are now transformed into ruinous shells. Many palaces are become uninhabitable, and no one takes the trouble even to secure their doors. This abandonment, this Tartar population filling the streets with their cattle, already present striking characteristics of decay and ruin. Amid this neglect of private buildings, a strong anxiety for the preservation of antiquity as time has spread is observable. The government are carrying on works upon an extensive plan according to which all those which are partly 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 covered with rubbish. Let me go back. The government are carrying on works upon an extensive plan according to which all those which are partly covered with rubbish are to be cleared and to be connected and grouped, that these precious relics shall present a view at once picturesque and agreeable. All the environs of the Vatican, with the exception of the main street, conducted to it, likewise abandoned to herdsmen. I was particularly struck by their desolate appearance. Early one morning, when I set out to visit St. Peter's, the sun had just risen when I reached the great square, and the doors of the cathedral were still shut. Profound silence everywhere prevailed, except at a distance I heard the bells of the cattle returning to their pasture. Not a man, which was right down the street to the Capitoline Hill, if I'm not mistaken. Not a man was to be seen, and I arrived in the forecourt without having met with one human being. The coolness of the morning and the tints of the dawn diffused the inexpressible charm over the enchanted solitude. I beheld the temple, its colonnades, and the sky before me, and never had in my mind so deeply feel the sublime magnificence of nature at the moment of separation between day and night. At length the doors of the church opened, and its bells announced the opening day. But in vain did their sound summon the Christian to their devotions. Not a soul came to implore the blessings of heaven. This temple, the most splendid monument that the world raised, hold on, to the divinity, this temple already states, and it already, I don't know what that says. Stands in a desert, I guess. The grass grows in its forecourts, and moss springs upon its walls. It already relates the glory and the magnificence of past ages, and prepares to proclaim to future generations the piety of the times in which it was founded. Sorry for struggling through a little bit of that, but it's not the best photocopy of this newspaper. But as you guys can see, here we have an 1813 account of Rome. And as I was reading this, you guys were taking a look at a couple of the pictures, and some video of the quote unquote excavation of Rome, which apparently took them 100 years, more than 100 years to do, after it was supposedly discovered in 1812. I'm sorry, in 1803 by some archaeologists. I think it's very interesting that this article is interesting because it very much throws light on this whole destruction and the ruinous state of this city, and the fact that it wasn't a capital of Christendom anymore. It hadn't been for a long time, which I have made a point, I believe, in some of my other videos, is that all the power and the prestige of quote unquote Rome and the Holy Roman Empire actually ended up being the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. And so Rome was no longer its real capital. The Holy Roman Empire of the German nation was between Spain, northern Italy, and of course the various German nations in Austria, and uh, and that's where it all moved to. And I think it's very fascinating, this depiction and the pictures of the excavation is incredible. I don't have it up here, but I will say that it is quite incredible, and it's one of those things when it's quite amazing when you really look at it into this whole thing. Here we have, and I'll link this too. Here's another stolenhistory.org thread by good old Corbin Dallas. But you remember in the article that I'm sorry, the two books that we translated, one of the things they talked about was that the houses sank 2 floors into the ground. Okay, 2 whole stories into the ground. That was part of the depiction that was expressed in the documents, which obviously had some editing to do it with it because that's just the way that it is. But as you can see in this picture, this is definitely at least 2 stories worth of dirt that is completely covered this whole thing. And some people want to say that this is like hardened volcanic ash. Well, you don't necessarily. I mean, hardened volcanic ash is, if it's hardened, then you're not going to be picking away with it with just a simple shovel, I don't think. Anyways, I think this is interesting. I mean, you can see just how, you know, gigantic this is. This was buried. This is not something that happened in some kind of sack. This is not something that happened in some kind of fire. This is not anything like that at all. And I just completely reject that idea. And as you can see, look at this, buried, all dirt, all mud, all muck, exactly the way that the two documents from the very first video explain. And if you guys haven't seen that video yet, please go check that out. It's long, but it's packed with really amazing information. And there are two translated documents from the 1530s of the time period that this actually happened. Here you go again, another piece right here, totally buried. I mean, these are incredible photos. Look at this stuff. This is just completely buried in mud. And this is the other area, Capitoline Hill, is actually on the other side of this building. But as you can see on the lower part of it, this part of it is also buried. And this is the fun part. This is kind of the funny part here. Supposedly, these statues were totally in place when they started digging this out, which is complete BS. I mean, come on. If this thing got buried, these things probably got smashed. So I think they added that to it. As you can see here, this is that famous building at the Capitoline Hill. Actually, as a matter of fact, oh yeah, it's on the other side. So the Capitoline Hill is on this side, but as you can see, this is all excavated. Look at this. This is many stories down, and and as you can see here, this obviously was covered in some kind of dirt. And I mean, you can see the plant material. Look at all that. The plant material is all over the place. It's just incredible. And here you go. Look at this. So this again, this is the byway street where the Capitoline Hill is, where I showed you guys, and this is all under the ground. This is all buried. These are really incredible, and you can see bars in this window here. I mean, personally, I was completely amazed when I saw all these things. Oh, and there's that building again. So right behind us and right around us is all the Capitoline Hill. Interestingly enough, I don't think any of these things are even. I wonder if these things are even above ground anymore because, if I'm not mistaken, like I don't know. I don't know what to think about some of these photos, but holy smokes. You can see this was one hell of a burial. I mean, look at all this stuff. And there's a beautiful mosaic at the bottom there. Here they have pipes and a bunch of stuff that they put through. Here's a part of the top of a. I mean, this is just incredible. These are supposedly the apartment buildings, if I'm not mistaken. The old apartment buildings. Oh, and here's the famous statue that they pulled out. I don't know if I believe that, but who knows? But yeah, I mean, you can see these pictures definitely don't lie. And this is some serious wreckage here and some serious destruction. So otherwise, I'm glad that you guys were able to check this out, and thank you so much for joining me for this part two of the flood of Rome. I think this was definitely absolutely worth revisiting, and who knows, I might actually have a couple more things to throw out to bolster the fact that what really destroyed ancient Rome wasn't anything else but one of the largest floods to ever hit it in its history. And I think despite the fact that its population had been significantly reduced, it still was such a devastating event for the city that it never really recovered. And as you can see here, they picked up the excavation of this between 1938 and 1942. And so for that whole period of time in the 1800s, they barely really touched it at all. But I mean, look at this photo, guys. This is just incredible. You want to talk about something that's absolutely buried under the ground. I mean, this is just insane. And I mean, completely gone, completely submerged. You know, this is just, it's really incredible. So if you guys like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so, and hit the little bell for your notifications. And share this out if you think other people would be interested in discovering the real truth about the ruins of Rome. Because I think that what we discovered here is really truly a uncovering of a secret history. And thankfully for the good people at the stolenhistory.org, which I still have yet to be able to join, even though I have sent the resend confirmation email about 50 times. I've never received it. I'll still give them credit for doing great work and sharing some of these things out. So, I again appreciate you guys joining me, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Peace.